We're going to talk about CFL expansion and how and where the CFL could expand to. So I know that we've got the coronavirus pandemic going on, so the league and business model will likely be affected, and we'll see how that happens, but we're going to talk about expansion as if it was before the pandemic. The current teams, there are 9 teams in the league, and for the most part, those 9 teams have been the same throughout history of Canadian football. There's a 10th team planned, it's approved for Halifax, but they're still figuring out how they're going to do that. There is a history of expansion in the CFL. They did a big expansion into the US within the 90s. The league peaked at 13 teams. Only one of those American teams is left, and they moved to Montreal. Why should the CFL expand? Well, they could be increasing fan base, increasing their footprint, increasing revenue, increasing the overall league value, as well as waving the Canadian flag. The current markets can be categorized into 2 categories. Big cities and smaller markets. So the big cities are the big 3, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, but their attendance is lower and popularity is not as strong. But in the small markets, you have 5 big-ish cities and 1 small market, Regina. They have strong attendance, and football has been pretty popular in those cities. How to support a team? Well, almost half of revenue is from ticket sales, and even more of the revenue is based on game day revenue. So there's a lot of importance for people being in the stadiums. You need about a 25,000 seat stadium or bigger, and about 15,000 season ticket holders. You need business sponsorships as well as regional support. Just to compare, here's a big diagram of the teams in the league, the cities. I put Halifax here just to compare them and who their competition is with. So there are 2 teams in the CFL that don't have to compete with the NHL. The NHL is a big dog and takes away a lot of dollars from sponsorships and various things, but there's also minor league competition, and the only city that doesn't have to deal with any of that is Regina, but they're top dog in the city, as for the most part, the province. Now the big issue with expansion is stadiums. It's a huge issue because there aren't really any big stadiums in Canada that don't have teams. The biggest stadium without a team outside of a CFL market is Quebec City, which is just shy of 13,000 people. And it's a big issue for expansion. It's the reason for the delay of Halifax, and I'll speak about that in a bit. And it was previously an issue for Ottawa before they came back into the league. And teams in Toronto and Montreal choose to play in smaller stadiums, as I was talking about popularity before and smaller attendance, and teams in big stadiums above 50,000 people actually limit the capacity of their stadiums for their games. Now a quick solution, now this happened in Vancouver many years ago and I like this solution, is build a temporary stadium. So they built one in Vancouver during the renovations of BC Place, and it had capacity for 27,500 people, which is perfect for a CFL team, and it costs next to nothing compared to a permanent stadium. It only costs $14.4 million, whereas normal stadiums would cost well over $200 million, and it took 111 days to build, and proper stadiums take years to build. So this could be a quick solution if they decide to expand and want to get a team in quickly. And the issue with this is you don't know how long the stadium is actually going to last, so it might be good to think about building a permanent stadium within 10 years or so of starting. So Halifax has already been approved, but here's a photo of their current stadium. It has capacity of 1,100, which is way too small. Now there is a soccer stadium in the city that holds 6,000, but still it's way too small. They've actually held an exhibition game here at this stadium, and it got it over 11,000 people, which is still small, but they have been here before. Now the only competition for Halifax is Premier League soccer as well as lacrosse. And for the most part, the whole region is underserved, and putting a team here would make the league truly coast to coast. There was another exhibition game planned for 2020, but most likely that'll be canceled. And because this is a relatively small city, the team would be representing the region. So the team is already going to be called the Atlantic Schooners, regardless of which city that they play in. And the reasons against putting a team here in Halifax is, well, the stadium issue, as well as the whole region is unproven for professional sports. Quebec City, I think this is top dog of who should get a team. It's the largest city in Canada without a CFL team. Population, 705,000, very similar to Winnipeg. There's no professional or minor league competition, no Canadian Premier League, no lacrosse. They already have a large fan base for football. They have a popular university team and would give a natural rival to Montreal. They've previously hosted exhibition games in 2003 and 2015, and here you can see their stadium is TELUS Stadium, just shy of 13,000 people, expandable to 18,000, and I believe that's what you can see in the photo. Now the reasons against Quebec City is the stadium, of course. As well, Montreal holds the rights to all of Quebec, so you'd need to convince the Montreal Alouettes to allow Quebec City to be a team, but I think overall for the strength of the league, they should do that. Saskatoon. Now this comes up a lot because of how popular the Rough Riders are in Regina, Saskatchewan, as well as across the country. Why can't Saskatoon have a team? It's actually a bigger city than Regina. Now they have the same stadium issue. It's only 6,000 seats. They got it up to 12,500 for a Vanier Cup, as you can see in the bottom photo. And the only competition is lacrosse, and that's winter. They have a large support for fan base, of course, Rough Riders everywhere. But another reason against is, will these people stop supporting the Rough Riders and support the new team? We don't know. And yes, this would give a natural rival to Regina. But the city is probably too small to host a team. Now, Victoria, another frontrunner I think should get a team, is the largest city in BC region without a team. Population is 335,000, very similar to Halifax. But the Vancouver Island population is 870,000. So there's a lot of people on the island, and the thing that's holding against the team is BC Lions have the rights to BC. So you'd have to convince the Lions to allow a team in Victoria. But if you're on the island, it's actually really difficult to get to a Lions game. You're geographically close, but you're 4 hours ferry drive in order to reach a game. So I don't think there are many people from the island actually going to BC Lions games. And this would give another rival for the BC Lions. So I think it would be overall good for the league if the Lions allowed this and they had proper investors to come in and buy a team. Now, Victoria has 2 stadiums, about 6,000 each. Now their competition is Canadian Premier League soccer, and they're trying to make the stadium a bit bigger, but they don't need it up to CFL standards. This is Victoria. I think it would be good for the league. Now, Windsor, Detroit. Now, here's a kind of a creative idea, but not sure that it can really happen. Now, the population of Windsor is 287,000. Now, that's pretty small. But if the team represented Detroit as well, you'd tap into over 4 million people in the Detroit area. Now, there's no professional sports in Windsor. Nothing. There's a lot in Detroit, but it would balance out with all the people as well as the Windsor connection. And many players are already from the US, so visas aren't really a huge issue. And it would give access to pre-built stadiums in the States, because Windsor's stadium is tiny. I put it up here. Its capacity 2,500. But if you go into the States, now you've got Ford Field just across the river, but I don't think the CFL field can actually fit in there. But if you drive 40 minutes from the border, you reach this Reinerson Stadium, capacity 30,000, and the field would fit in that stadium. And only a 40-minute drive. So it's close to Canada. But the reasons against this is, well, does the CFL really want to go back into the US? It's really risky. Will the NFL block this if the CFL tries to go into American territory? Will the Detroit Lions allow this? There's a lot of things that would have to figure out, and I don't think that this is likely. Now, there's a bunch of Ontario cities which are far enough away from CFL teams but have large population bases. So I highlighted them in yellow. You've got Kitchener, London, Oshawa, St. Catharines. Now Kitchener's the biggest, 470,000 people. And their closest stadium is Guelph. And they've played a lot of games at Guelph in the university when the Hamilton Tiger Cats Ivor Wynne Stadium was being renovated. So there's a stadium that can be made into a CFL stadium. But who's to say that Hamilton and Toronto would allow more teams so close to them, as well as attendance is an issue and popularity is an issue in Toronto. So would they want more competition? I don't know if they would allow that. But there's definitely population centers that could support. Now Moncton, I put this one in here because there's a lot of chatter about Moncton getting a team. They've played a lot of regular season games actually in 2010, 2011, 2013, 2019, and that's mostly because they have a stadium. Now the stadium is normally 10,000 people, which is pretty big for the size of the city, only 108,000, so just shy of 10% of the population can fit in the stadium. They can expand it up to 20,000, so that's about the right size for, you could make it work with a CFL team. And the whole region, as I said earlier, is underserved for sports. So there's a lot of people that would drive in to go see games. And when they've hosted these regular season games, I know people from all over, from Prince Edward Island, from Nova Scotia, that drove in to go to these games. So I know that people would drive in to go see these games. The city is a bit too small, so it's a bit risky to put a team there. And with expansion to Halifax, I don't think Moncton would happen because it was seen as a one or the other, just picking where to put that Atlantic team. Now, this one, I love this idea. Mexico City, population over 21 million people. It's a giant market, and it's largely underserved for American football. Now, the NFL, they host games in Mexico City every so often at the Aztec Stadium, and it's super popular. They sell out. It's a big deal, and in Mexico, they've got very passionate sports fans. Sports are a big deal, and they have stadiums for it. I posted here the Estadio Olímpico Universitario, Olympic University Stadium. They hosted, I believe, the Olympics there as well as World Cup events. Capacity 72,000. So it's way bigger than you need, but we don't know. Maybe the CFL would be super popular if they expanded there, and that's a perfect size stadium. You never know. Now, the commissioner's gone down to Mexico for combines and drafts and stuff. They've established a partnership with the Mexican League, and there was actually a lot of interested investors looking to actually buy a team in the CFL. So there is interest, and I think it could work. The flight to any Canadian city is actually shorter than the flight from Vancouver to Halifax. So I think you could make it work with travel. There's still, I believe, in the CFL, international anxiety, and in Mexico City, it's an unproven American sports market. They've never really sent any of the big four leagues down there, other than the NFL playing a few games down there. Now, I think expansion, if you were to do that in Mexico City, you'd need to expand by 2 teams and cover different regions of the area, create a rivalry in Mexico City. But I think Mexico City would be a great place to expand to. In conclusion, there are many options, very much available. It could help keep the league alive and maybe help thrive in the future. You look at the CFL expansion into the US in the 90s. It actually, even though it was failed, it helped the league in that all those expansion fees helped keep the league afloat. So that was, I would say, overall, in the long term, it's been positive. They need to solve the after COVID business model. We don't know what's going to happen in 2020, how it's going to affect this season and beyond. So that's something that needs to be figured out before they can think about expanding. But maybe expansion fees, that'll help the league. We'll see. Thank you for watching. Do you think there should be other options? Do you think I missed some details? Do you want to hear more? Let me know in the comments. Thank you.